The Democratic National Convention kicked off on an emotional note. The room was teary-eyed as President Joe Biden took the stage. He reflected on his legacy while rallying for the future of America.
A night to remember. Tears, hugs, and chants of "We Love Joe." A visibly moved Biden addresses the convention, his voice tinged with emotion.
I love you. And with a grateful heart, I stand before you now on this August night to report that democracy has prevailed. Democracy has delivered. And now democracy must be preserved.
In July, Biden made the difficult decision to withdraw from the 2024 presidential race, clearing the path for Harris to lead the Democratic ticket.
When we put a prosecutor in the Oval Office instead of a convicted felon.
Biden's every word evoked more cheers as he passionately endorsed Harris and her running mate, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz.
Let me ask you, are you ready to vote for freedom? Are you ready to vote for democracy and for America? Let me ask you, are you ready to elect Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, President and Vice President of the United States?
Harris, whose campaign has gained tremendous momentum, made a surprise appearance, expressing her gratitude for his leadership.
Good evening. Joe, thank you for your historic leadership, for your lifetime of service to our nation, and for all you will continue to do. We are forever grateful to you.
While praising Harris, Biden lashed out at Donald Trump.
He says we're losing. He's the loser. He's dead wrong.
Our rights. We will fight day and night. We will fight. No.
Biden also briefly addressed the concerns of the pro-Palestinian protesters gathered outside the convention hall, acknowledging their anger and reiterating his commitment to working tirelessly for a ceasefire in Gaza.
For Joe Biden, this must have been a personally difficult moment. He spent more than 5 decades in elected office, serving in the Senate, elected first when he was even too young to serve at 29, for decades, and now having been vice president and then president for 1 term.
The Democratic Party is now looking to the convention to propel Harris towards a decisive showdown with Trump, whom they view as a significant threat to the future of the nation. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
And as the day 2 of the Democratic National Convention kicks off in just hours from now, we are being joined by Jonah Blank from Washington, D.C. He is a former foreign policy advisor to President Joe Biden, who advised Biden for 9 years on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Mr. Blank, good to see you yet again on WION. Thank you so much for joining us. Let me start with this. Kamala Harris entered the DNC in Chicago with leading in the opinion polls, especially in the battleground states, barring, of course, Pennsylvania, where we just checked she's still trailing behind Trump. But in general, the entire atmosphere that we saw on day 1, the party's rallying behind her. Why do you think that the duo keeps calling themselves underdogs still? What is your assessment of that?
Well, thank you for having me here. I think the real question in terms of who's the underdog, who's outperforming, is to what extent can we trust the polls, and to what extent is what's basically a statistical tie going to break in favor of one side or another. The Democrats are right to be portraying this as an underdog fight because that's the mentality they really need in order to win. We've seen in the past that Donald Trump tends to outperform his polls. He did it in 2016, he did it in 2020, and the Electoral College favors the Republican Party. So the Democrats really have to treat this as an uphill battle right up until the very day of Election Day.
So would you agree with that sect of people who are just calling this another honeymoon period and we might see something different in the days to come?
I hope that that the honeymoon extends all through a harmonious marriage, but the Democrats have got to treat this as a tough fight. One of the things they're doing really well, and we should credit Kamala Harris, we should credit Tim Walz, of bringing some joy to the fight, bringing some optimism, some upbeat energy. That's exactly the right attitude. Joe Biden gave a wonderful speech, and if this Joe Biden had been able to be there 24/7, he might not have needed to drop out of the race. But the fact is that even at his best, he was not able to bring the joy and the lightness to this that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz have brought. They've been able to be happy warriors.
Right, Mr. Blank, you make a very important point there. I also want to ask you this. I want to talk about the protesters outside of the DNC center and obviously the foreign policy that we might expect from the next U.S. government. But before I come to that, let me ask you this. Do you think that sect is large enough for the two candidates to actually cater to their voices?
Oh, yes, I think so. They have all week to do it. Tonight was Joe Biden's night. Would have been helpful if the DNC had cleared away some of the earlier speakers who really, frankly, didn't need to be there. There were a lot of really low-level, mid-level DNC operatives who took a lot of time and forced Joe Biden into an after primetime spot, which wasn't very helpful. But tomorrow is President Barack Obama, former President Barack Obama, and former President Bill Clinton. The next night is basically Tim Walz's night, and then the highlight is going to be resetting the table for Kamala Harris. So there's plenty of time.
All right, and let me ask you this, since who better to ask than you? Do you think Kamala Harris's policy towards Gaza is going to be any different than Joe Biden?
That's a wonderful question, and the honest answer is we don't know. She has given a lot of indications that she's more sympathetic to the Palestinian cause than, frankly, Joe Biden has been. And I hope that those expectations are borne out, because
Mr. Blank, since you used the word sympathy, one of the protesters we just spoke to said, we do not want sympathy, we want action. Then how does Kamala Harris react to that?
That remains to be seen, and that is it's an open question. And right now, the United States has, in my view, not taken a helpful role in this struggle. It is still supplying the weapons that the Israeli government is using to conduct a brutal occupation that is giving the Palestinians no hope for the future. So I really hope that Kamala Harris brings a true change when she is president. I don't think we're going to see any real change until Election Day, but after inauguration, I hope if she is successful, I hope she will take more of a balanced and pro-Palestinian stance.
All right, Mr. Blank, thank you so much for speaking to us from Washington, D.C. and getting us your insights.
Thank you.
For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.